So, welcome everybody to this webinar on AI and tech transfer, which is going to be largely delivered by Mike Smith from the University of Bristol. And as you know, Mike posted on the online community with suggesting that this was a hot topic that we should be discussing and that members should be taking seriously and really actively thinking about at this time. And any of you who've been to Knowledge Exchange UK conferences over the last couple of years will know that artificial intelligence as a tool for in drafting patents perhaps or drafting disclosures and the role it can play in help as a tool to help you do your work more efficiently, more effectively perhaps, has been discussed, but we haven't really touched on how that then has implications for the role of the tech transfer professional and the responsibilities that you have and how it might impact on the identity of the tech transfer office and the tech transfer professional as the capabilities of AI develop and expand. We also know that there have been some good projects about using AI in tech transfer, notably one led by the University of West London as a shared TTO initiative, which has demonstrated lots of potential for AI, and teams, particularly smaller teams where resources are a bit stretched, are seeing the potential for AI in helping them to manage capacity and increase that disclosure pipeline. So we're here today to talk about the opportunities and the threats that AI poses and the considerations that we need to actively look at now rather than leaving it till, keep on pushing it down the line as something that will eventually come to land on us. So being prepared for AI, I think, is the message here. We've allowed a couple of hours for this webinar, but we don't necessarily need to use all of that time. We're going to have a presentation from Mike and then from a couple of other people giving examples of how they're using AI in their operations and in their roles. And then we will open to Q&A. In the interest of allowing you all to speak freely, we are recording the presentation so that people that can't make it can access the presentations and the kind of narrative around that, but we will stop recording when we get to the Q&A. So if you want to make points which you might think are contentious or uncomfortable, then you can absolutely feel free to do that in the Q&A, as that won't be recorded. So I think without further ado, I should say, do use the chat. I will be keeping an eye on the chat for questions that are coming up. If you want to ask a question to clarify a point in a presentation or a really burning question, then you can put your hand up. We will keep an eye out for hands up in the chat as well, and in the my colleagues Rita and Owen are online as well to spot hands up. Otherwise, we'll come back to questions at the end. I think I've covered everything. I will hand over to Mike.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Tamsin. Really appreciate that. Thanks so much for coming, everybody. It's quite a turnout, which is probably tells us something as well. Just a quick thank you to Tamsin, Rita, and Owen who set up all of this. I mean, as Tamsin said, I put something up on a blog group, got quite a good response. Went back to Tamsin KE and said, perhaps we should have some sort of event to discuss this, and they've been met with nothing but positivity on the matter. So I really appreciate that and what everyone's done at KE to make it happen. A few caveats, just so you know, I'm no AI expert whatsoever. I'm just a tech transfer manager at Bristol, who happens to use AI a lot. I use it in pretty much most of the work that I do. I'm really sort of advocate for it, but I'm no expert on it whatsoever. I'm sure there's a lot of you there who know far more than I do about its uses. But I sort of thought about this quite a lot, and I've been talking to a lot of colleagues, a lot of people in our profession about what it means and how it could change everything that we do, and been met with quite a lot of differing opinions, and it's been absolutely fascinating to sort of discuss it. And I've had a few projects, and the way it sort of impacted me has been quite dramatic. And I've been doing sort of tech transfer now for 20 odd years or so. I've not seen a technology change the way I work in such a dramatic way. But that's just me, and it may be different for everybody else. I've seen some, interesting tech come, CROs. I've seen patent searching systems and that sort of stuff, which have all been nice little add-ons. It's really helped. But I've never seen something that really impacts in everything I do in tech transfer, from the initial disclosure to concluding the deal. So, and it just made me start thinking, what does this mean? How does it, if it's making such a big impact, what does it all mean? So that's kind of, I think, why we're here. Here's the things, when I say I'm no expert, I don't know quite a lot about where it's going to go and what it does mean. What I do think I know is that we need to talk about it. We need to be all getting together and having a chat about it. The things I do know, it is already entering knowledge exchange, tech transfer workflows. I've spoken to quite a lot of people who are seeing real big productivity shifts. They're seeing real major measurable output changes, which have been quite dramatic. And there's I've seen a few articles about it that's been published, and that's been quite interesting, with real numbers on there to say how much they're able to churn through more projects, or increase the quality of their projects, or deal with projects quicker, whatever it may be, which obviously then raises some practical and structural questions for us as a profession. How does that manifest itself in changing how we are, and what does that mean for a tech transfer office? So kind of I want to explore today really what is working. Is there anything we need to worry about? Is there any threat to what we do here? Rarely in any industry where there's a big rise or a big impact of technology that increases efficiency, do you not see something that perhaps you need to worry about? But I don't know that. What might change? Well, I think really what we want to head for is, what are we going to do about it? What do we need to do, if anything? What do we need to do next to try and address this? That's what I'm kind of hoping to achieve. As Tamsin said, it's 2 hours. Whether it will be 2 hours, I don't really know. But it depends. What I want to try and do, the crux of this, I want to get a real chat going. I've had some really interesting conversations with a lot of the contributors today, and before we did this event, about how they see AI and how they're using AI. And it's been amazing that I think in the discussions that we've had, Luke, Sahan, David, we've disagreed on so much and we've agreed on so much. It really is an unknown quantity. It's so unknown, and I think that's also a really good reason why we just do need to keep talking about this and how it affects things. You'll see then there's going to be sort of 3 case studies. So a massive thanks to Luke, a massive thanks to Sahan, a massive thanks to David, who volunteered to just talk about how they're using AI themselves. What I perhaps would like to do after they do their bits is perhaps we'll just, when they finish, they'll do it for like 10 minutes or so. Have a look if you've got any questions, because there may be some of you in the audience that really use AI, don't know much about it, and I don't think any of us profess to know everything about it. So you may have some sort of questions for them about how what they've presented and how they use it. So we'll just have a little brief moment to do that, so you can really understand what you've just been told. And then, but really, I want to go into a real discussion about the sort of things we want to talk about. Got a couple of polls I want to do, so if you can have your phones at the ready as well in a bit, just to really try and gauge what our feelings are, what our use of AI is, and what our feelings are about AI at the moment. And I'm going to try, if the tech allows me, to do a poll at the end as well. Fingers crossed, everybody on this, as to whether our opinion has changed or shifted in any way following the case studies and the discussion that we've had. So yeah, that's hopefully what I'm going to try and achieve from all this. So the questions, when we get to the discussion, that may sort of guide us. These are just something I've just made up, but whatever we think. We're going to look at how AI is being used right now in TTOs. I always say with AI, it does not come with an instruction manual. You can't just open up and say, "Oh, right, I want to use AI." You've got to work it out yourself, and you've got to make it up yourself. And the way AI is being sort of spread around and adopted, and the way people use it, they just talk to each other and say, "Look at this cool thing I did it for today." And so I think we need to be starting that. We need to be sort of teaching each other how we're using AI. What are the opportunities? What are the risks? if any? Is that a problem? Is it not a problem? Is this actually a fantastic, great new dawn, or is this the demise of tech transfer offices as we know? I don't know. And how could it reshape the roles and the teams? And again, like I say, what should we do about it? So what I really hope that we're trying to understand, because I don't understand any of these things, and I really want to start that conversation to help us understand is an opportunity, is it a threat, or is it both? What is happening and what is changing? And if we were to look ahead 1 or 2 years, what's it going to look like? What's the tech transfer office going to look like in 2 years' time? Same? Maybe? I don't know. But do we not need to get ahead of the game and be sort of driving this rather than being driven by this? So that's hopefully the context of what I want to get through, and hopefully you're all sort of buying into that as an idea. So if you can get your phones at the ready and use that QR code, and if you can cross your fingers that this works, then if I just want to sort of look at an idea of how often you are using AI in your role at work at the moment. Are you using it all of the time? Are you using it perhaps once a week, perhaps just once a day? Perhaps you just rarely use it, never used it, whatever. If we just let those sort of polls sort of come in, which they are, well done. Embarrassing to do a presentation about tech and then get the tech wrong, wouldn't it? So I'll let those sort of come in. How many guys? 100 people here, so I'll keep it going. Brilliant. Just keep it going a little bit. They're still coming in. Okay, keep voting if you want. I think we can see where we're at. So that's interesting. Then I mean, I suppose this is an audience of people who decided they wanted to come to an AI event. So that's going to be quite selective, but still, heavy users of AI. Nearly half people use it multiple times a day. That's where I put myself in that category. The rarelies and nevers count for about 10%. So that's great as well. So I think when we get to that point where we're hearing about some of the examples that we've got, that'll be really helpful to you guys. But interesting. So that's great. So thanks ever so much for that. Don't worry about voting now if you missed your chance or whatever. I'm going to jump on to the next question. Hopefully then this will work too. So it should just switch on your phone. I hope it has. And I've spelled fantastic wrong. How do you view AI in tech transfer? Do you think it's fantastic and it will enhance what we do? Do you think it's useful, but it doesn't really matter? It could be a threat. It's a real problem. Or we just don't know. So we sort of really want to get an idea of how we feel about this at the moment. This is working well, isn't it? Right. Right, let's give it 10 more seconds. Right. Well, I think we know the result. So that's brilliant. So that is a really, despite my typo, that's really, that's a really positive spin on it. That's, easily, vast majority, you think this is just going to be brilliant and it's going to be an enhancement. So that's good to hear. That's good to hear. There's a few don't knows, and a very small think it's a serious risk. So it's positive. So we're looking positive on this. And hopefully, that's how it will pan out. Wonderful. Thanks ever so much for taking part. And that's been really, really helpful. I hope that's interesting to you, sort of gauge how your colleagues are thinking. That's great. Okay, so I'm going to go now to some case studies. I'm going to ask Luke to go first, if that's okay, and then we'll move on. So, like I say, Luke will just do a bit of what Luke's doing. I don't know what Luke's going to say. I don't know what the technology is. I'm not sort of driving this at all. And Luke's been really, really kind and offered his time. So I really appreciate this, Luke. Thank you so much. But yeah, Luke, if the floor is yours, if you take this, have 10 minutes or so, and then we'll perhaps have a few questions for Luke, and then we'll move on to the next presenter. You
The
ready to go, Luke?
only request here, Mike, is it possible to share my
Yeah.
screen?
I'm going to say yes. I think if you just start sharing, you kick me off.
Is that how it works?
Yeah.
Ah, I see. Right. Okay, cool. Right. Can people see a screen which has just got the Google?
Yeah, we can.
Right. Excellent. Right. Cool. Right. Similar to Mike, like, first of all, I'd like to thank him for organizing this event because I know how hard these are to actually put together. The remit here it's quite interesting actually in that poll because I'm no expert in this either. Like, I'm basically just a power user of it within the tech transfer space the last couple of years because I just kind of adopted it quite early and have been given the freedom within the University of York thanks to a manager that was allowing me to kind of mess around with it in my work time. I found a few use cases that now means that we've adopted this within the whole of our tech transfer office. So where it was me about 18 months ago operating with a free version of the Gemini system and just messing around, we're now have all 6 of us in the office on the paid Google Gemini Pro version of it. And what I'm not going to discuss here is why we're using the specific tools, like, because there's ChatGPT, there's Google Gemini, there's Grok, there's Perplexity, there's use cases for all of them. The reason why the University of York we're using Gemini is simply because it's the only one that got through the cybersecurity system. And that's specifically because we've adopted the Google ecosystem at York. So we have Google Drive, we have all those Google versions of Microsoft Word and Excel that are harder and more complex to use. But that's the reasoning why, is that it's basically just integrates in with the current system that we already had in the infrastructure at York. So that's the reasoning. Right, so I'm aware as well that a lot of people have said that they're already quite big users of this. So apologies to anyone if I'm just going over like stuff that's already there. I'm partly speaking to the 20% that say that they rarely use it. So as a starting point, to just get onto the Google infrastructure itself, like, all you are doing is going into the Google Chrome search bar and putting Gemini into it and then just clicking top link. It's as simple as that to actually get into what these AI tools are for anyone that was just unaware of just how you get started on it. Once you're in there, you'll see that I've got can people see the counter, like my mouse moving around? Just
yeah.
Okay, right, cool. Because I'll use this to point. So you'll see I'm on the pro version of it. All of that means is that I can stick it integrates in with my Google infrastructure. I'll show you that in some of these examples, but it also means that I can put in confidential information and the algorithm doesn't learn from it. So I could put license agreements into here and it would be kept confidential. You would not want to do that if you are not on the pro version, okay? Like, I just want to make that abundantly clear to everyone. Right, when I started using this, the way of which I was starting to get value from it is just trying to understand complex technical documents simply. And when I was first messing around, the way that I was doing that was reading the documents entirely myself, and then anything that I didn't understand, I'd start asking it questions about. So if I take, for example, a technology that came into me last week, where they were talking about polarized proton therapy, like, a simple use case for how I'm using AI on a day-to-day basis would be inside a meeting where I'm discussing this with an academic. He starts talking about really, really complex technical stuff on polarized proton therapy, and I'm simply there going, what on earth is it? Yes, I can ask the academic to do that, and I did in that meeting, and he gives me then a master's level explanation of layman's terms, polarized proton therapy, still not abundantly useful. What I can actually have alongside myself is just this quite useful little tool that's that I can ask it questions. So at the same time as him talking, I was just asking, can you explain what that is in layman's terms for me? And it just gives me a really simple loadout of that. And more often than not, at the end of these things, it just comes up with a really brief summary. So from this, I can see that it's a research topic, and it currently has limited clinical use. So probed him on that. Is it used in the clinic? Is it just not published work yet, and they are actually doing this? But at the same time, also asking this thing alongside it, why is it not used clinically? Can I just get some information that I can start probing these questions while I'm live in a meeting? So he doesn't see me asking the really stupid questions, but it makes me suddenly look a little cleverer. So you'll see from these prompts, these are all pretty basic, right? Like this is just one sentence things. I'm not doing anything too abundantly clever, I don't think. And the information here is all subject to needs checking. Like I'm not taking this for rota as fact. What I'm using it to do is tease out a conversation. So in the situation where it's saying limited clinical use, I will ask the academic, do you know of any examples where it's used in a clinic, just to corroborate whether or not that is factual or not. So it's called like human in the loop AI sort of use. So you get the prompt back, you insert the prompt, it does its job, sends it back out, and then I make sure that I verify everything that's in there. So, and that's pretty much going to be the story of this throughout. So that's kind of simple use case. Where things can get a bit more complex is that you can actually get it just to do summaries of any document that you're in. So now I'm inside Google Drive, and this is a patent family that's abandoned, so it's okay, there's no problems with confidentiality here. But in order to just summarize a complex patent filing, so this is a 40-page patent, 46-page patent, you'll see that just clicking on this, it will just automatically summarize it for me because I've got the pro version. And it would give me a readout of what's going on here. Now, that's useful to a degree, right? And you could do that similarly. I was doing this on another system for the industrial strategy that the government published a few weeks ago, and asking it just to do a summary of what do I need to know as a tech transfer professional in order to just understand this document, and how could I get use out of it? Interestingly, you can also summarize these things in like an audio overview, where if you want to be really kind of nerdy, you could download that, and I could walk my dog listening to the industrial strategy. So if I give you just an example of what that sounds like, I don't know if you guys can hear. No, it's not going to work. I'll send a link to what is two American people. There's one girl voice and one boy voice that is, in essence, just talking like any podcast about the UK's industrial strategy and how it relates to tech transfer. Now, what you can also do here is in the summary documents here, like, okay, summarizing it is half useful, right? But like you might want to be actually probing the document for something. So for example, within this document here on limited time, I could ask it something really simple like, I'm a very busy guy. Which pages do I need to focus on? And I mean, this is a pretty simplistic example, but you could imagine this inside license agreements too, in order to just pick out specific bits of information, like which bits are the specific financial parts that I need to be honing in on. But it's, in essence, it just gives you then from that 46-page document where it thinks I need to draw my eyes on if I've got limited time to focus on. It gives me an explanation for why it's doing that in each case. So that's an example of it doing that. And then further, if I wanted to download that pattern, I could go one step further where, so if I now go back into my Gemini thing, so ChatGPT will have a version of this where you can basically create different versions of the thing. So you've got like the overall chat function, but you can then also separate out different things to do specific jobs. So I've created two, what in the Google Gemini system is called gems. So one is a pattern analyzer. So if you were to open this out, and I can share this with any of my work colleagues within the Google Gemini system. So I think Amanda's on the call and Colin, who've got to play around with this yesterday. But all that I've done is I've set up a prompt previously, and they're going to insert stuff into this prompt thing. So if I just, so all they see is this. It analyzes patented technologies and offers commercialization suggestions. All you need to do is attach a patent document to the prompt and hit enter. So all you're doing is downloading that document, putting it in here, and hitting go. And what it does is it sputters out yes, it's generic, but it's a starting point just to get the ball rolling on kind of how you could then look at building a commercialization sort of model around that technology. And it's taking all of the hard work of prompt engineering away from the majority of people. It only needs one person to do the prompt and look after it. Everyone else just gets to use it. So if I just look under the hood of that, just so you can just see what I've done to generate it, the prompt itself looks quite sophisticated, but it's not. What I've done is I used Google Gemini to help generate the actual prompt. So I've told it exactly what I wanted it to do, and then I've asked it to generate the prompt for me that then makes me look super clever, as it then generates this thing here. Now, if I wanted this in a specific so if I wanted to get more sophisticated, I could then include what are called knowledge files here. So I could say, I'd like you to give me that overview in a specific style, please. That is like this document that I've attached. And you can give it example documents in order to kind of help further analyze it. But in essence, what we're doing here is just kind of drive it. Like when I've got a patent portfolio of over 30 patents, I can't theoretically just know and understand every patent at every one time. I can just use this in order to, often it's just to quickly refresh my brain on what this thing is and how it's useful. That then allows me to kind of get back into the game on it. And you'll see that here I've got a couple of different ones. So I've got one for the patent analyzer. You could equally use it to also sort of infer technology explainers. So that's for exactly the same patent again, where it's again just giving me a draft version, like a draft first thing. This is something that would normally take me 2 to 3 hours in order to generate if I was to do this normally. This now is first draft in like a minute, and the time it takes me to just put the document in here. So they're just a couple of use cases that I wanted to just kind of highlight of where we're getting use out of it. I'm not saying these are the only use cases. There are just tons of ways of which we could actually utilize these. But I'd say that on a daily basis, like at the moment, I'm using this 20, 50 times a day. Like pretty much in any meeting, I would be using this right now. I'm basically happy to take any questions, I think.
Oh, brilliant, Luke. Thanks so much, Luke. That's fantastic. What's the best? If anyone has any questions, perhaps pop it in the chat just for a couple of minutes. I think one big advantage you've got there, Luke, is that integration of it into your system, which I wish I had. I've created quite a few of the tools that you've got, but it doesn't talk to my systems. I have to manually upload everything on a case-by-case basis, which is a pain. So, but it'll happen. It inevitably will happen. It's just got to catch up. So Tori's asked the question: have you found anything that Gemini is not useful? Like Gemini is not useful for?
It's not useful for final drafts. Like that. Ultimately, it's not something where you want to give it something and then you would immediately send that off to an academic or to another team. Like it's not good at producing really detailed things. It will pretend to give you a very detailed factual document, but it'll be full of mistakes. The point is to try and use it as a first draft tool to just kind of get some ideas going. And then the prompts that you put in and the follow-up questions should then refine what you're doing. So you're using your brain to then kind of utilize the tool, because you need to refine it. And it's really only as good as the refinement that your brain is kind of, the human in the loop element of it is doing. So like, I've stopped showing my screen, but with the technology explainer example, it's too broad, like is the problem with the first draft. But you can then make it more specific. I can put my own brain into it and say, well, wait a second, no, I want the specific use case of X I want to focus it on these companies. Can you redraft it, please, and focus on these points? And then it'll give me a second draft of it. So it's one of these things where the use case of it is to not just replace me, like, because I don't think it can at least at the moment. It's just not powerful enough to do that. It's using it to just, where it would take me ages to write a first draft, it suddenly becomes much quicker in order to generate that first rubbish draft that you then end up sort of riffing off.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's see if I've missed. Max has asked, there's a lot of tools out there what led you to land on Gemini. Is that simply because you Google integrated at your university? Yeah,
it's because of so when I went and asked about utilizing these tools, you can imagine that inside a university, the IT teams immediately panic and say no.
Yeah, that's right.
And then I was able to kind of explain, well, look, we're using this in the same way as Google Drive already, so Google already has access to all of these documents. It can already see everything. All that we're asking for is to use it in the same ecosystem. And that's how they then sort of converted about.
Brilliant.
Yes, it helps to have the paid version, of course, like where I can put in any document. But for most of the time that I'm using it on stuff where it's already published work. With patents, after the 18-month mark, they're already publicly available, right? So all that use case can happen 18 months afterwards from that published thing. Because the problem is at that point, Google already has it. So you can actually just ask it to review the patent by just typing in the patent number, and it'll come up with the application for you.
Brilliant. Oh, cheers, Luke. That's amazing. Thanks so much. We're gonna move on if that's all right. But I really appreciate all of that. Sahan, are you good to go next, mate?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I was just reading the chat. So much hate for Copilot.
I was about to say that. The geeks are out.
Okay, I'll talk about it in a second. Right, let me just share my screen. And we'll go from there. Thank you so much for the presentation earlier, Luke. It was great. I really enjoyed it. I think it sets the scene really well, and I don't have to repeat the live demo, and it saves me quite a lot of time. And also, I went a bit wider in terms of what's happening now and what it means for us, AI and KE. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you to KUK to organizing this. I'm always up for a bit of AI chat. I had a presentation in KUK 2025 and hopefully in 2026 as well. But what my presentation would be about is in 3 sections: what is happening now, what's up with our sector, what's up with our job market, what is the opportunity. I think Luke covered quite a lot, but I would go for a bit more, and also what could go wrong. Based on the chat that I had with Mike and most of the people that are here, I would consider myself an AI optimist, full disclaimer. And I think most of the 70%, I suppose, are AI optimists here as well. But I mean, there are risks. I get it, and it would be good to have a chat about those as well. Very quick introduction about Auxentia, our company. We're a spin-out from OUI, basically. Our heritage goes back to the University of Oxford. When we're ICES Innovation. And we expanded our work internationally to Spain, Latin America, and Asia. And then we obviously rebranded from ICES to Auxentia and span out in 2017. And we have a foundation now as well from 2020 that we to tackle global inequality by backing innovation and entrepreneurship. Just me. I'm Sahan. I'm very quick introduction as well. I'm a senior consultant and AI digital strategy lead at Auxentia. I did iCure when I was in Exeter doing my PhD as well, and I did 2 more postdoc, and I've been in Auxentia for nearly 5 years now. January would be 5 years. Right, straight to it then. So what is happening? Just for people who don't know, AI is already being used quite a lot by students. wanted to make sure that everyone's on board, that 92% of UK undergrads are now using AI in some form, and also 88% of them have used generative AI for assessment. So writing their essays, writing for their articles. It's not necessarily copy and paste from AI that assessment use. It's more like using it for brainstorming and getting ideas right. So it's already being used by students quite a lot. So what has been the university's responses? It's been great. I'm using the Oxford example. Now Oxford has GPT-5 for all the universities, staff and students and academics, everyone. That's the education version. And then you can see University of York has that as well in terms of Gemini. So one aspect I want to talk about now here, I suppose, is that most universities are either Microsoft universities or Google universities. So the Google ones would use Gemini, Microsoft ones would use Copilot. So whatever Luke showed is possible in Copilot as well, but you just have to have the paid version for that. Another thing I want to focus on is that I'm sure the Gemini York has done this. You need the enterprise version of whatever application that you're using. Why? Because there was a court ruling for GPT-AE last summer, I suppose. What happened was they were sued by the Times, and they were ordered to retain whatever data they have. So you cannot really delete stuff from their server. In some versions, so the Teams Pro version, you cannot delete that. So GDPR issues might be present there. It's not the same for Gemini. Gemini is not subjected to this ruling. But again, if you have enterprise version, it's zero data retention policy, so you can delete whatever you want. Just a nuance there. I thought I should say that. And also, many universities have now AI policies. So, for example, we work with quite a lot of universities, but not just Oxford, Edinburgh, Manchester, UCL, Solent, quite a lot of universities. Edinburgh, sorry if I haven't mentioned your university, and you have an AI policy as well. So what are the funders are thinking about it? UKR has been quite encouraging, to be honest, very progressive on how you can use AI. So even in the bid writing, you can use AI tools, even then to create content, but obviously you have to check if it's correct or not. As Luke said, you need to review whatever AI creates. That's the whole thing that needs to be done. So to make sure it's contextual, to make sure it's accurate, and you need to use it responsibly. So that's the UKRI policy. So all pro AI. So, what is from the KE perspective? This is a quote from McKinsey report that 30% of current hours workload will be automated by 2030, and it's accelerated by generative AI. One thing that I want to talk about, I haven't talked to a tech transfer person or a team that says we have enough time, we have enough people. There's always a resource barrier. There's always a workload barrier. There's quite a lot of workload that we are subjected to. So really, if you think about AI, the first thing that comes to mind is efficiency. So really, that's what it offers. It's a bit more time. It's it's getting over that. Well, make the barrier less visible when you work with your academics, when you work with the technologies that you want to transfer as well. And again, are we going to become obsolete? I would think certainly not, because AI is still not reliable. It doesn't pass Turing test. You can easily say if a document is created by AI or if it's created by a human. You need an expert eye to review it, and really emphasis on the expert. I'll tell you why in a second. So from the K perspective, what can we use it for? Luke showed quite a lot of ways that you can use it for. These are some of the bits that I think you can use it for as well. The partner matching, admin, creating a market insight and have a market insight, engagement, bid writing, quality analysis, and impact case study. Hopefully in 2026, we'll discuss it more, KEK 2026, quite a lot to be discussed there. So AI, as I said, AI could be an opportunity and not going to replace us completely. I made these slides this morning. So, but is it all good? No, of course not. So there are quite a lot of risks associated with AI. This is the slide that I presented last year in KEK 2025. I wanted to highlight as Luke was talking, I just put the pro version versus zero data retention as well here to talk about the data privacy. But these are some of the risks. And as we're going further and further, the new risks emerge somehow. We created this responsible checklist that you can use. It was printed and distributed last year, but you can use it anytime you want. But what I really want to talk about now is the perspective of job market. So if you read the news, you're going to see that the firms whose jobs are exposed to AI are recruiting less in the junior roles. And there's quite a lot of entry-level hiring freezes. And AI is being used to do the tasks that usually a junior hire would do. And it's being automated. In the short term, that's quite a risk to me, in my mind, because we're not creating experts anymore. We're just using AI as experts to do our daily jobs. So the new junior, the next generation experts are not really experts. So because they're not being hired, simply as that. So again, this has an effect on the entry-level job market as well. Right. So what could go wrong? So junior jobs and next generation experts, we talked about this already. But what I wanted to cover as well is that we are the last generation probably that would do our jobs as we're doing now. The next generation would not do literature review, market research, our daily tasks as we're doing it now at all. You already use AI to summarize a paper. You already use an AI to not read a document. So everything's going to change. But is it necessarily a bad thing? Does it mean that we're not going to do technology transfer, KE? I don't think so. I think it's going to help us, but there's a bit at the first that the junior people. So the way I learned how to do market research and then extract market insights is to do that automated task that is being done by AI now. So that's the gap that I see at the moment. Another thing is that the reason people compare this to spreadsheets, generative AI to spreadsheets, people compare generative AI to all sorts of inventions. The difference is that generative AI is generative, so you can create AI work slot. That is one of my favorite words at the moment that everyone uses it. The AI work slot means a beautiful output that has no context and does not answer the problem that you have because you didn't use the right input to create that. So the AI work slot is present. We see it everywhere. There was a case in that Deloitte was basically sued by Australian government because there was an AI work slot, their AI work output, and it had AI hallucination, made up references, and all that. So they basically got paid. I forgot this is being recorded, but they got paid back whatever they were paid, Deloitte. Another one, for my Fight Club fans, the outputs might be a copy of a copy of a copy, basically. So we might use the nuances and insights that you have now to make this a genuine work of yourself, really, where it comes from. It's not you anymore. It's a pool of knowledge that is the same for everyone else. But at the same time, I want to make that clear as well, that the valuable expertise are becoming more and more hard to find, really, because again, everything is becoming a copy of a copy of a copy. That means that your expertise, your genuine expertise, would be much more valuable in 4 or 5 years, really. And also, we might think the same in 5 or 6 years, because this is getting too philosophical, probably, but the AI is using the same pool of words to create content. So some words are not going to be used in 20 years, 30 years that we're using now. And also, really, you would lose abilities to do very simple stuff like writing, like thinking even. You might lose that when you use AI all the time. So these are really real things that I sometimes think about quite a lot. And it would be good to know your perspective as well in the Q&A. That's it for me. So thank you very much. I think I covered quite a lot of the opportunities and risks, and it would be good to have a Q&A and talk about all of these as well and get your perspective. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Hannes. Really appreciate that. That's awesome. Any questions in the chat, guys? I missed.
There's not so much questions, Mike. It's people are just kind of responding to earlier thoughts, provocations. There's something about, we're talking a lot about the generative AI. Is there any other uses of AI that we might want to think about that's we should bring up here that you want to consider? But quite a lot is about the types of interface that are being used, I think.
Right, brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, that's brilliant, Sam. Thanks ever so much. We'll go on to the final presenter. So we're probably going to have a bit of a different perspective. So David's from Barker Patel. So David, if you're good to go.
I am. Hopefully people can hear me.
Yeah, absolutely. Can hear you loud.
Lodging. Okay, I will attempt to share my screen as well in that case.
That'd be brilliant. Thanks,
Let's
David.
see if that works. We want screen number 3. There we go. Let's try that. Success. Perfect. Okay. So what I'm going to cover quickly, patent attorneys and AI. So just giving a perspective from our point of view, regulatory background, AI tools, issues, and some commentary. So just very quickly by way of introduction, we're a patent attorney firm, kind of 60 odd attorneys based in Birmingham, work with lots of universities. I do quite a lot of work with universities. So we work with Bristol, and I've put up a few on here, but that's not really why anybody's here. So just to start, what I'd like to say is, from our point of view, we have regulations. So we're regulated by 2 bodies. If you're a UK qualified attorney working for a university, you're going to be European qualified and UK qualified. So there are 2 regulatory bodies. One is IPREG, and that governs whether we're on the register of UK patent attorneys. And one is EPI, which is the body that is responsible with the EPO for administering who's on the list of European qualified representatives. So we have to please both, and they both have their own set of guidelines. So IPREG have what they're called, I think, overarching principles, something along those lines. A tier is maintain proper standards of work, and obviously running right through the whole thing is keep your clients' affairs confidential. IPREG have issued guidelines specifically on the use of generative AI in the course of our work, and they say that we're responsible at all times for our professional work. We can't cite the use of generative AI as an excuse for errors or omissions. We've got to check any work product produced using generative AI for errors and omissions, and it must be of at least the same standard it would have been if it had been produced by a competent human practitioner. And we must also establish, in advance of using generative AI in their cases, the wishes of clients with regard to the use of generative AI. So EPI say, effectively, they're guidelines, so they're not actually rules, but I think we'd be foolish not to follow the guidelines from our regulatory body. You have to get consent from clients before using generative AI in the course of handling their cases. Well, obviously, confidentiality, we've mentioned it already, but I'll come to it in a little bit more detail, I guess, later. So broadly speaking, there are 3 buckets of things that we can do, as a profession to try and use AI in the course of our work. One is to use specialized tools. So the confidentiality thing is a major problem. We don't just work with universities, we work with overseas law firms and all kinds of big corporate clients who are very, very nervous about the idea of us putting a confidential invention disclosure that might be extremely valuable straight into a commercial off-the-shelf, web browser interface to ChatGPT. That's absolutely not allowed, because we cannot establish under those circumstances that won't be used to train the AI, and that it's not going to be retained by ChatGPT as part of their chat logs, and therefore possible for a third party to retrieve. So before we use an AI, we have to be 100% confident that the confidentiality we're happy with, and that we can address any questions that our clients are going to raise, point them to a one-pager to say, oh, here's the 0 data retention policy. We're definitely okay. It's not a problem. So there are these specialized tools. They've done the hard work for us, and these are in use by law firms. They're generally expensive. They've been specifically designed to address the confidentiality issues and prompt engineered already for you to have built-in tools, so you don't have to write your own gem/agent. As Luke showed earlier, there's a reasonably quick and dirty way to make it kind of have a pre-packed way of addressing your questions. The people who are developing this software have put a lot more effort in, but they charge a lot more. So they charge typically maybe $300, $150 to $800 I've been quoted for, depending on the package. That's per seat per month. So it's seriously expensive if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to get 50 people to use this tool, and you're being charged $400 a month. That's going to add up very fast. The middle option, I should just say, all of these tools use the foundation model. So they're all firing off APIs to API calls to ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, or all 3. So every time you ask it something, it packages up what you've asked it. It puts some prompt engineering around it. It sends it off via an API with an agreed 0 retention policy around it, gets an answer from the AI models, brings back the answer, possibly does a bit more faffing about with it, and then presents it to you. And around that, they built an interface for us to use. That's why they charge. So the other option is to make your own cloud deployed version of an off-the-shelf model with whatever requirements you have. So you can get ChatGPT to do you a custom interface and promise they won't retain your data, and put some branding on it, and have your own URL that you get to it with. And the third option, within this I include Copilot and Gemini. That's kind of what you've got there. You've already got a subscription to some corporate IT package, and you've just included the AI with it. You can be confident that Copilot, Enterprise Copilot, and Enterprise Gemini will handle your data the same way that they handle all your other data, and presumably you're happy with the way they handle all your other data. Our emails live in Microsoft Cloud, for example. And the third option is on-premise. So you can, if you've got the IT and the stomach for it, run a local AI on-premise. So Llama and Mistral are both open source AIs. You can get a GPU-laden server in your basement and run it on that. Don't know anyone doing that. Lots of people are doing 1 and 2 at the moment. So everyone's using Copilot that is in the Microsoft estate, as far as I can work out. Quite a lot of people are testing the tools. We are, and lots of people are also rolling them out at various stages of maturity. So how are they for the sort of work we do? Drafting is potentially the big win. This is super confidential because none of it's public. They're not great for drafting. They can't just draft a patent application. They can't just draft claims, quite frankly, but they can help. So with a qualified attorney to keep it on track, they can save time. We're not quite sure how much time at this point. We're still in a relatively early stages of testing it. I personally have a tendency to very much hold its hand and end up just writing it myself, with a bit of argument and argy-bargy with the tool along the way. They're great at some things. So Luke touched on it, explaining technical subject matter. If you get an invention disclosure, and sometimes we do, it's incomplete. It's just a diagram with a load of alphabet soup on it, and they just expect you to understand what all those acronyms mean and immediately understand what they're talking about. you can chuck that into an AI and say, what on earth does any of this mean? And have a conversation with it where you go around a bit of a loop. In the same way that Luke showed, you ask it some sensible questions, it'll provide you with some answers. You use your judgment to determine whether they are sensible answers or not, and ask it for proof, references, probe it, all that sort of stuff. So they're good at that. They're good at giving you something to critique, which again is something that Luke said. You get a starting point to pick holes in and not a blank sheet of paper. They're great at writing the background, which isn't that really that super important in a pattern spec. The other thing you can use them for is office actions. So the examiner says you're not allowed the thing. We've got a public specification, a public communication from the examiner, public prior art. You can take those, upload them all into whatever AI tool you like, and you can say, does document 1 disclose feature X? And it'll tell you what it thinks. You might not agree with it, but it'll give you a good starting point. You can say, does our patent say anything that's not mentioned in documents D1 and D2? And it'll have a go at answering that too. And you can agree with it or not agree with it. Again, you can check the paragraphs it cites. You can ask it to cite paragraphs if you don't believe it. You can say, where's their basis for feature X, which you might want to use in an amendment? The problem with this, we find, is if you can't find it, it makes it up. And it makes it up in quite a smooth, plausible way as well. So you're left looking at paragraph 69 and thinking, it doesn't say that at all. So, yes. Issues for us as a profession. Historically, our work is based on charging for an hourly rate. So an AI that promises to save you time and cost you money is something that requires you to rethink your man-hours-based charging approach. You end up having to move to a fixed fee because if you do it twice as fast and pay loads of money for a tool, obviously you're losing both ways. We need to get client consent. That's the thing we're currently in the process of doing. We also face issues with clients using AI. So they're being used by both large and small clients in the course of generating invention disclosures. And we see stuff that literally has, would you like me to help you rewrite this in a slightly different form? You know, obviously still included on the bottom of a document that we've received. Or it's got the kind of telltale, it's, 4 bullet points. It's 5 sets of 4 bullet points with a subheading, and, you can spot it. Once you get the hang of spotting the output, you can spot it. There are issues with inventors using it. So confidentiality, inventorship, who invented it, if they asked an AI to help them come up with an idea. What an AI says can often be very technically superficial. It sometimes makes vast leaps from things that are very much researched to say, oh, you could just use a graphene processor in your ultra low power implanted tech that is the size of a grain of sand. And you think, really? It's a fire hose. So somebody the other end of the email can just launch a 50-page document at you every 10 seconds, should they so wish. So you ask for clarification, they send you back 5 versions of the same thing that are all different. We charge for our time. How long do we spend reading each of those documents? Do we just say to the client, please stop, this is painful? And you can get into a spiral with it. So somebody who doesn't know what they're doing can say, I've got this idea, can you expand it for me? The AI does. They say, is it going to make me rich? The AI picks up on the idea that they think they're going to be rich, and it feeds that. So I don't know if you noticed, but when Luke was screenshotting some of the stuff from Gemini, it said stuff like, great idea. Oh, that's such a fantastic question. They're terribly crawly, some of these AI models, and they have a tendency to promote engagement by confirming what they think you want to hear. And they will do that. And if you don't know what they're doing, you get into this spiral. And we've seen it from inventors where they get into this spiral. Oh, it's going to be worth millions. And when an expert looks at it, they say, oh, that's a bit of a dead duck. And the questions I would ask an AI would pull out the fact it's a dead duck, because I already think it's a dead duck, so it's probably confirming my bias. So you have to be quite careful. It's not just confirming your bias. So the commentary, I've only got one slide on this. For us, it's not good enough to do our job right now without pretty close supervision. It's getting better and it's already useful. Potentially the long-term impact on my profession, well, we're going to get more productive senior attorneys using the technology. We're going to get better quality work. We're probably going to get it used by the Patent Office. I think the USPTO are already talking about a potential where you pay a slightly different price and you go on a slightly different track for examination, and then maybe there's a slightly different presumed standard of validity. Don't quote me on any of that. I've probably remembered it wrong. That's not legal advice. But I suspect that's the way things are going to go. because patent offices have got huge scale and lots more to gain by using one of these tools, so that they can afford to spend money on them. There's a potential downward trend in recruitment. We've covered this already. Someone else mentioned it. AI needs an experienced handler, and the AI is a bit like a trainee in that it produces a first cut of something for the experienced person to fiddle with. And I know that it's a big problem in the US. I don't know what the demographics are in the UK, but the age of patent attorneys is getting older and older in the US, and this is not going to help with that. So I can't remember who it was mentioned in chat. We're all worried about people losing their brains and losing the ability to do stuff. But a potential counterpoint to this in my head is that when I was at university, people taught me how to solve differential equations using like maths and a piece of paper and a pen. And then I started to go and be a researcher. So before I was a patent attorney, I did 10 years R&D, designing stuff. And the amount of times I ever did maths was basically zero after I graduated, because I would use numerical methods for everything. So I would just go into Mathematica or partial differential equation toolbox, and I would solve it numerically every single time. Wouldn't bother engaging my brain with maths. Can anybody do maths to the same standard that if you look at a paper written in 1940? I suspect not. Everyone uses a computer to do it. So probably people are going to learn a different set of skills, but you have to be live to the fact that's happening, in my opinion. So that's where I'll cast it open for questions more generally.
That's brilliant, David. Thanks ever so much. I really appreciate that. Questions, Tamsin? Can you? Sorry, my view of the chat's not probably as good as yours.
How do I stop sharing? Oh look, I'm rumbled. I was just using Gemini for a bunch of things.
Yeah. Oh, look at that new invention you just disclosed. Brilliant, thanks.
Yeah.
There was an interesting question. I'll distract everybody.
Magically make it. If someone knows how to take it over again, be my guest.
I might be early, but just grab him on.
I'll ask Rita or Owen, who are the back office, to stop the screen sharing if we can. So Laura has just asked in the chat, is anyone creating or procuring bespoke in-house tools, or are the existing commercial tools good enough? I can't see the whole audience here, but I don't know if John Charlton is in the audience, or somebody from that CCF project, which was about creating a kind of more in-house approach, or starting from the kind of tech transfer need. How can we use AI to support this creation of pipeline and helping with the disclosure phase very early in the pipeline? That's a really interesting project to look at. Involved Mish Kondareya and Sony, I believe. So you can read about that as part of the CCF projects, and I'm sure at KUK we'll be talking about it when we look at that set of projects. But I think one of the opportunities is thinking not just taking what's off the shelf and what can we use it for, but starting from what do we need AI for and how do we make it more bespoke. Sahand.
Thanks, Tamsin. Yes, that's one of the tools, but I would say, Laura, most of the tools that are being generative and has to do anything with text, they have an input from some model. Like I think that tool, the CCF as well, has an input from GPT, if I'm not wrong. So they basically have some sort of communication with all these tools. It's really hard to make that large language model in-house. What you could do is run those models in-house on your server. That's something that you can do, and it's safer than any other option.
Thank you, Sahand.
I had a question actually before we move on, just for the three panelists. It's kind of loaded because I know I spoke to you about this before. A lot of you have sort of mentioned that the increased productivity, but you've also caveated that with the idea that you always need to be there. So whilst productivity is certainly increased, you get through more stuff, and a lot of the churn is given over to some of those. You always need yourself to be there to oversee it. Just playing devil's advocate on this. Then looking as a team-wide though, does that not mean that whilst I've always needed in these projects, you always need me, you just don't need as many of me in any team? I think Sahan, we had a chat about this as well. I don't know what your because you disagreed with me on that.
Yeah. I think okay, we're getting a bit philosophical again. I think, to be honest, I think we're all going to be needed at this level, Mike, as at the level of expertise that you have. I think just because I'm gonna touch on something that David said and Amanda wrote on the chat. It's absolutely true. There's always this type of changing. Or do we need juniors? That they're gonna use something different. So when I was doing my lab work in the university, I was doing an automatic pipette. Before me, they were using something like a manual pipette. So is something very different? Yeah, I get your point that you don't need that junior level. But Mike, you're probably very busy, and all of your colleagues are busy. So uh, you might get around the barrier of that busyness and workload, and actually the quality of output can be improved. I think that's what AI
Yeah.
enables, I think. So we're all just instead of being a good enough output, it would be I'm not saying that anyone is creating good enough output, but it's just a increased level of output in terms of quality. So that's how I see it.
Yeah,
At
brilliant.
least.
No, thanks, Sahan. I don't know whether David or Luke, you got anything on that?
I think I probably share that view in that if you want to be cynical, I think it's not just got the capacity. You've seen from my slides, it's not just got the capacity to make your life quicker. It's got the capacity to give you new problems. So I suspect with your ability to knock out a document that is at least as good as you previously did in a shorter time, there's somebody downstream of you who's now got an enhanced capability to ask you annoying questions about that document. So I think you might find that while it makes you more productive, it potentially kind of makes everything fatter in a way that improves quality a bit, but doesn't improve like productivity that much. That's my suspicion, but I don't know. It's hard to predict. I think it does make you more productive. So there will be an impact on jobs. I'm just not sure how big it is.
Yeah. Good point. Okay, Luke, you're going to come in, Luke. Sorry.
I think the only thing I'd add is that we're still learning how to use them. Like I'm not professing that I've got the best way of utilizing these systems yet, and I think that there's an element of I'm probably still not using it optimally, and each week I utilize it, I'm using it in a different way. So like I don't think we're at a point yet where we are getting the maximum out of it, would be my thoughts, because we haven't got anyone currently, to my knowledge, that's fundamentally just sat there 8 hours a day for their job, figuring out how could we be utilizing these specifically for this job.
Yeah, and I think the value of sharing how you are using it is why we're here, so that maybe we can, as a community, develop kind of a benchmark or a certain point in time. Like now, we're doing a kind of benchmark where we think we are now. We come back together in, let's say, 6 months' time at conference. How has it moved on? Because we know if we know anything, we know that it's constantly changing and it's changing fast. So if we kind of do that, let's take the temperature at these different points, then we can see how opportunities might change and how we might come to have more trust in certain aspects of how we use AI, and how we might actually start to say, well, actually, let's not use it over here because really it's not giving us good results, or it's throwing up different problems. But also we can think about the notes I've kind of made are, how do we rethink the business model, and how do we rethink the skill set for tech transfer? Does it enable us to have more person-to-person contact time, which ultimately is kind of where a lot of the creativity and excitement and joy of working in KE comes from, is actually talking to people and bringing people together and convening and facilitating conversations. And actually, if you're not always having to start from a blank piece of paper to do that, then I think that for me that's a positive.